one is the Fund of Future.
Good evening. Welcome to Defacto Review, a weekly in-depth analysis into the news and current affairs here in Mongolia with our commentator and economist, Jagal Defacto.
Good evening.
And I'm Anan Tumurtaga. You can watch us live on Facebook on MMB World, and you can join in the conversation on Twitter with the hashtag Jagal_Defacto. Today on our program, a parliamentary working group has finished its analysis of the investment of the agreement of Oyu Tolgoi deposit and concluded that the 2015 agreement signed in Dubai should be revoked. The president vetoed new amendments to the General Administrative Law on May 19th. What was his justification for the veto? What's behind the decree to revoke the Camp Nairamdal land ownership rights of the 64 entities and individuals? For our first story, the week's political focus was on the Parliament's discussion of the government's Oyu Tolgoi investment agreement. A parliamentary working group led by MP Tirbishtawag presented the findings of the analysis of the agreement and gave Parliament three primary conclusions. Meanwhile, Oyu Tolgoi's share prices have dropped to a record low. So, the Oyu Tolgoi project has always been talked about, and however, last month there was a huge spotlight on Oyu Tolgoi, and there's a public understanding that Mongolia is not benefiting from this agreement and that we are being exploited actually. So, what was the project initially, and where is the problem?
Well, that's a misunderstanding, in a way brought by populist politicians and those who were initially doing that agreement. And there is a clear understanding that whether we have to have this 34% or instead different way of sharing the benefits. What's happening today is, so far, after 9 years of operation started, initially the underground, then the under the ground preparation is going on.
The underground mines preparation, yes.
And so far, this project have been, the total about $9 billion was invested into the project, out of which 2.4 came to Mongolian government coffin in the forms of taxes, payments, royalty, etc. Another 2 billion came to Mongolian suppliers, some 700 of them out of 1,000 suppliers, total suppliers. And 90% of the employees in that project are Mongolians. If you include employees of the supplier companies, there will be altogether about 40,000 Mongolians are connected with the project. So this is an important project for the economy. But the discussions, the whole thing is coming from the understanding from the presentation that using the current model of cash flow, because Mongolian government owns 34%, which implies them to investment about that size of the project.
So it means that we need to find that investment, right?
Yeah, instead of finding or looking for the investment, that money is brought by Rio, for which we pay later on.
Because we can't find other investors from Rio.
No, because we are owner of the 34%, as owner of the project, we need to invest as well. So what's happening is we cannot find, they borrow the money or in their account. But we should have in mind that we have not borrowed today the money, but the account's going on now. And according to Irtnis Mongolia, Irtnis Oyu Tolgoi, which is the Mongolian 34% responsible company in the country, they made a calculation, cash flow model, and it says that up to 2029, the project will not have any profit. And when they started in 2029 profit, then we start to pay this credit interest rate we're talking about. It will go all the way another 11 or so years to 2040. Only after that we will be able to have any dividends from the project, which completely disappoint many people. So which raises the issue of owning 34%. What is the merit of that ownership?
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing. Conversation is happening in Mongolia today.
Yeah. So the working group examined the agreement. They brought up 3 conclusions. And can you brief us on what were those conclusions, maybe?
Yeah. First of all, the Parliament Working Group, with the head of Mr. Tirbish Davuk, another long-term Parliament member, and he and another 12, total 13 Parliament members were members of this group. They have been working for 2 months, and they had also a subcommission or group, which is consisting of some 20 or so NGOs and other people. So they came out, and I should say also that out of 13 Parliament members, 4 of them have not signed that report. They have different views, and which was not completely expressed. So I'm just asking if the 4 of them have not signed, whether it is legal document or not legal, to discuss as they now do at the Standing Committee, Economic Standing Committee of the Parliament. So what is the conclusion? First, the government in 2008 and 2009 have not fully working under the instruction given by the Parliament. That's what they say. So my question is, then what you have been doing after 10 years? That's the raising issue. Second conclusion is we need to improve the contract. The third one is we need to annual do-by contract. Do-by contract is about the continuation of the underground mine, and there was also a management contract where the Rio is also taking 2% or so of every operation cost for their management, and certain other percent for creating, borrowing money, giving certain kind of collateral. They would not, $6 billion they cannot give to any state as a loan, right? Because it's a Rio, because it's such a vast, large operations, 20 or so companies gave that loan. So, and at the same time, with this statement, another Parliament member, and who is also Minister of Mining, Somya Bazar, said that I'm not justifying to-buy contract, but however, we cannot stop the project. Maybe we can have regulations with another agreement or so. That's what his point. But however, annualizing or terminating the Dubai contract will bring Mongolia to the quadrant number 1, like in 2013, when they had also uncertainty about the costs, which was solved in Dubai when the Prime Minister was Sayhan Bilik. Our group went there, they signed the contract, they have agreed. There were certain disputes about the costs. $1.5 billion costs were not recognized by the Mongolian government. So the process was just stopped. It's about 8,000 Mongolians were fired. Employers were fired. So what happened was, after that Dubai so-called contract, the thing started. So there, after that, 6.6, as we said, $1 billion committed by 20 plus international banks. And all the difference with for 5 years ago, now those 20 plus international banks will not allow Mongolian government just to cancel the Dubai contract, and the project is stopped, and they will not allow just this one is failing like this.
Yeah, the government wants to revoke the contract.
Well, the Prime Minister said no.
Yeah,
that's an important thing so far. And it was the wish of out of at least 13 Parliament members, 9 of them said we should cancel the contract.
Yeah.
And that cancellation will bring the zero to the quadrant 0, like 5 years ago.
Yeah. So the Rio has also announced that they will not negotiate on any of the basic agreements. And so what should the Mongolian side do? It seems like we're in a lose-lose situation from this.
See, we should understand what is the Rio. Rio is the 2 largest mining international company in the world, BHP, and Rio Tinto. And the Rio Tinto had written off almost $11 billion asset, meaning that they have abandoned, left, or sold 2 projects. One is in Indonesia, Grasberg, large project, second largest copper mine in the world. Another one is Mozambique. And they have just written off, which means they have sold whatever they have interest to other partners. In the Indonesian case, in Alum, the Indonesian company bought that shares, paid $3.5 billion to Rio. So for the size of Rio, now it's a matter of how long these Mongolians can play around. And now even the Mongolian government is blaming them cheating. Should not say government, but the few parliament members saying that they're cheating and they are winning, we are losing, etc. So I don't know how the executives of Rio Tinto can stay for that forever, because Rio is an interesting company, not owned by individuals, by several companies, and the executives are doing what they're supposed to do. If they continue, stay longer in Mongolia, they will be portrayed like, they are cheating and staying there. So probably they will try to save their reputations, and it doesn't cost anything it's a big project, but however they can leave.
So my last question is that, so we're in a very bad situation, but the mining sector is the major branch of foreign investment that we have. In other words, it is the main sector that fuels Mongolia. And what will happen, saying that Rio might leave, what will happen if we stop this project altogether then?
Probably we should not come to this end, so that both are diversing. I don't think it's the best solutions. Rio understands, they expressed in certain way that they can make an agreement change, but down the road, not now. Because you see, every year before election, just a year before election, Mongolian populace coming with this loud arguments that this is a bad deal. Yes, 34% owning is not the smart decisions ever. So I think the best thing is to negotiate again, but not before election, after election, down the road, probably after the underground mine works. You see, by 2023, the total production of OT will be increased 3 to 4 times. Today we are in the pure copper way, 160,000 tons copper we export, pure copper. I'm not talking about the gold coming together, silver, molybdenum. There is a certain ratio they are reporting that, but it can be increased 4 times. And then it means the 40% of Mongolian budget revenue could consist of that project. So we cannot just miss that in that way. So we probably need to replace 34% with only 10%, but free carry interest, which means because it's our deposit, without paying 10%, we will own it first. Secondly, probably we must increase that royalty, which is now at the level of 5%. Probably we should bring into the 10-15%. Erdenet is paying 15% today, the joint venture with Russia. I'm a former joint venture with the Russians. But now they pay a lot because up to $6,000 per ton of copper, they pay 10%, and about another 5% more. So probably we have to be par with the Erdenet. So this kind of restructuring of the contract, but then it will make, I think, us a win and win. So that people will be also happy understanding, because time value of money, that's what we have not accounted 10 years ago when our officials were doing the negotiations. And at that time it was very naive to have the agreement with such a giant company, a couple officials from Mongolia. They have all with their lawyers, everything. So this is another issue. We need to change that initial contract, but down the road, let it work, because we have both. We will lose a lot of our reputation if we just abandon let them leave the project.
Okay. Well, moving on to our second topic, Parliament passed amendments to the General Administration Law. legal experts have spoken against the changes, and the president has wholly vetoed the new amendment. So now is a matter of whether the new veto will take in effect and the parliament will accept the veto. So legal experts have spoken against the changes, but regardless, parliament passed the new legislation. And although the parliament specified the law does not bear any benefits to any side, but it seems like as though it does benefit one side. What do you make of this? What do you make of this? What has transpired? This legislation passing.
First of all, this general administrative law is happening. In this law are existing in many the common laws jurisdictions. The civil law jurisdictions. In common law jurisdictions, it is happening less. Why? Because in common laws, where there is a constitution and the other laws coming from the constitutions, but if all laws, all matters of discussions, disputes, fights are solved, if they are solved in only criminal or civic law, then how about the administrative law, which kind of coming from the any actions by the government? So that's why we have this law, which was approved in 2015. It was initiated by that time President Ilbugdarj, because that time government was not supporting the law. Then since 2016, it was valid. Then what happens? They have been amending it every year. 2016 in December, 2017 in May, now 2019 in April. So I'm asking questions. Why you would make a law that you amend every 10 or so months? What kind of law is this? Either you don't know what you are doing or you are serving particular interest groups. So I think it's both, because not the best talents go to the Mongolian parliament, that's clear. Mostly it is not merit-based government, it's clear. So that's the situation. They are amending it again because they have on now probably agenda.
The president actually vetoed this new legislation amendments. Can you maybe specify what was his reasonings behind these vetoes?
The veto of president has several rationales, of course. Yeah. One is says that it's limiting the right of people to speak against the violations or any kind of restrictions of their rights given by constitutions by the government. First, they say. And second, also say that it is attempt to have the government out of the people's control, etc., etc. There is arguments which sounds good, but however, whether they will accept is different issue.
But why would the president veto on this? He was in the past he was very correlated or like cooperating with Parliament. Now he seems to be against it. Why is that?
Because under this law, basically the substance of the law amendment is to take out the government from the General Administrative Court, and the government decision is kind of absolute. Nobody can even argue about that decisions, which is very dangerous because, for example, as a person, I want to give the government to the court for misusing our lands, for example, Ulaanbaatar land.
Yeah.
But if the law is adopted, I cannot. Maybe at the level of minister, maybe, but many decisions are made at the level of government. Yeah. Government, ministry, agencies, at all these levels, they are taking out the government from the being liable. So this is a kind of raising a question. If the government is out of the responsibility, why we should have this law at all? Yeah. So that's the reason why. And plus, for example, in the government, they can make any tender, any kind of concessions that nobody can questioning afterwards. Maybe this is the case before the election. You know, every year before the election, every government was investing so much with our public money that they haven't been doing before. So during the whole kind of accelerated period, they can do so many projects that want to maybe under this law to hide. That's the reason how I see.
Do you think Parliament will accept the president's veto?
I think not, because for that you need 2/3 of the Parliament members to supporting this veto. And this particular Parliament will not support this kind of veto. Why? Because just take the example of this misuse of small medium enterprise money fund, and they took to own company with 3% interest rate, while market rate is 16-20%, and they now are kind of in a comma that they are responsible for that embezzlement of the fund. So if this law is adopted, then nobody can complain about that actions, for example. So I think this Parliament has the most conflict of interests. That's why they will not adopt, I think.
And it will look bad for Parliament also.
We look bad anyway nowadays with these parliamentarians.
Yes. Well, moving on to our third topic, also returning to politics.
It doesn't make also the Parliament look good.
Yes. There was previously, again, like we talked about, discussions of legal possessions of land were centered around Zase and Yarmak areas of Ulaanbaatar. But now the land in the vicinity of Camp Nairamdal is being debated. The government has given 100 individuals and organizations land ownership rights. But now the government has instructed the municipality of Ulaanbaatar and the Ministry of Nature to revoke those ownerships and to demolish any buildings that have been built in that area. So again, government comes up, and it seems as though that no area in Ulaanbaatar has been sold off, basically. And Nairamdal complex was used to be a special state use land. So what do you make of this situation of our government basically giving out land to anybody who desires it and just making it a law or like passing it along?
Well, this is another case of how Mongolian governments, mayorship, so city administration for all these years, have been misusing our land, our property, and making themselves rich. Up to now we talk, but nobody hold responsible so far. And take not only Nairamdal, but all the valleys of Bogdol, the South Mountain. Not only from this side, but from the other side also. Those who had power, who has close to power, and particularly to Ministry of Nature Protection. These officials have been misusing, and it is not a protected area anymore. It is kind of another extension of the city. Who is taking responsibility? Take the Yarmak land, the south of road to airport.
Yes.
It's been completely constructed now, building up. Who's taking? We don't know who took the land, and every Ministry of Nature Protection is to take responsibility for that. But we should protect our nature from the Ministry of Nature Protection. So that's what Ulaanbaatar city, the Nairamdal. Nairamdal is in the northwest of the city, only very much forest area, big fence, and originally it was the International Children Camp. And then now these individuals have, many of them are parliament members, all the wealthy, well-known people, they all the lands.
Yeah, sports athletes, celebrities.
It is started from when the mayor was Munkbayar, then after Munkbayar, Batul, So Batbol. Batul, for example, giving the land to head of the Democratic Party, Irtin. He made 3 houses. One is under name of his mother, the other is another son. The third is so-called taking care of sick children.
It's all in the vicinity of Nairamdal, right?
Yes, and now one of member of the Democratic Party was tweeting that our Democratic Party is demanding the resignment of this current government to protect his property. So this kind of conversations, and unfortunately, really, not only here, our former presidents have their own land there. The question is, I mean, they can have you can have a land there, but the procedure should be open. And no Ulaanbaatar people will know that they were giving a land there.
Yeah.
And it is the land where also traditionally the Russian embassy had owned dacha, summer places, large area. But we have the same area in Moscow, so I think it's diplomatic issues. But around that places, all these people close to the political party leaders, governments, former presidents, prime ministers, close to them, people have this land. It is unfair.
Yeah.
But revoking their rights is impossible. It's too late, too little already.
But they said they will demolish the buildings and stuff like that.
Well, the most they can show for demonstration 1 or 2 buildings. Otherwise, there are many people already living for years. I know some guys, 15 years living there. So, I mean, who will pay for the damage of property? And, I mean, many people, for example, in Zeisen, they bought apartments with their own earned money.
Yeah.
But now if you take it away from them, they need to pay. I think there is only one solution, that is impose tax on the real estate. In those areas, in particular, very high tax, so that they pay for injustice, for making the city leadership better, more transparent.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, at least the current mayor is making these decisions. It should be not easy.
Yeah. So it actually looks good for the current mayor, but it seems as though when we have these kind of issues, we don't really confront the people who actually gave the rights.
That's the whole issue. If we confront those issues, as you said, we need to bring to the prison, 4 or 5, probably the ex-mayors.
Yeah.
And not only, many other officials who have signed, etc. Then I think we need to make more prisons to put all these officials to.
Maybe a prison for officials.
It should be. Yeah.
And I think the issue, sometimes the issue is always around, like we tend to be using force a lot and not using laws or any kind of solutions that would actually confront these issues that are correct, maybe, right?
Well, correction is must be like this one now. At least it brings to the attention of people how much for generations they were misusing our lands, our properties.
Yeah.
The other thing is all lands, all public properties should be registered. And in particular in the land, the clear boundaries of private property, public property, common property are to be very clear outlined, which they don't do, not because they don't know.
Because they don't want to, maybe.
Yeah, because it's more useful for them to sell under the table those which was not marked. That's what's happening, and I wish this current mayor, if he wants really to do some changes, differences, he must do that. And one. Secondly, again, the real estate should be taken seriously. They should pay taxes. Those who is living now in legal place should pay even more taxes. There is no other choice. And finally, they should have zoning of Ulaanbaatar city very clearly, where the residents, where the production, factories, manufacturings, and sales, their car sales, etc. So all these things should be planned. We talk about long time, but every politician talks so beautifully all this stuff, but things remaining as it was before, and still they keep plundering our properties, politicians. And hope with this time it will be a little bit one step better, but I don't think it will be substantial changes, because these politicians of several generations of these 2 political parties, 3 I would say, so much intervened. It's very hard to break the chain. So, but however, it doesn't mean the public should stop it. We should demand our rights and our property violations.
Okay, unfortunately we have to end our discussion there. Well, and that's all the time we have for on Defacto Review. We'll see you next week on MMB World.
See you later. Thank you.
Parliament
One is the fund of future.